Welcome to Martha Runs the World, a podcast with a new take on running, fitness, and all things health-oriented. I'm Martha Hughes, your host, and each week I present a new topic that is of interest to all runners. Hi, and welcome to episode 305 of Martha Runs the World. This week I'm going to talk about a terrible event that happened in ultra running. It is the most terrible disaster that has ever happened in the sport. It's the only event of its kind that has ever happened in ultra running. And this is, of course, the Gansu ultra race disaster. Don't stop listening because I also will give my book review of the Frontrunner. I interviewed Brad Fawley, the author of the novel, the running novel, The Frontrunner, last week, and I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the book itself. On May 22nd, 2021, the worst disaster to ever occur in ultra running happened in the Chinese province of Gansu. 21 runners died that day, and I'm going to go over all the events that led to this horrible disaster and why it happened and how it could have been prevented. When runners sign up for an ultra race, they certainly don't expect it to be as harrowing as mountaineering or big rock climbing. The vast majority of ultra races are extremely safe. Yes, you face many adverse conditions, and it may be the most difficult thing you do in your entire life, but the race directors have taken every precaution under consideration and made it as safe as possible. They work hard to ensure that every participant has a great, but perhaps very difficult day, or days, depending on how long it is. Sure, they create a tough course, but if the weather is too adverse, they may decrease the race length, for example, or they may even call off the race. This happens a lot. They may decrease the length from 100K to a 50K, from a marathon to a half marathon. It happens all the time in racing. Ultra races in North America, Canada, and primarily Western Europe are extremely safe and usually well produced. Unless, of course, the race director is inexperienced. And I've done one of those races before, and, well, it wasn't the best run race in the world, and there were several problems with it, because the director had never done it before, so yeah, that was a problem. Things get a little sketchier in developing countries, and I'm not saying that there aren't great races in the rest of the world. There certainly are, but they don't have the same strict standards of safety as they do in U.S., Canada, most of Europe, Japan, I'll add Japan into that, and other Australia, okay, New Zealand, those kind of places have very strict standards when it comes to races. And many developing countries do not have those same standards. One might point out that Badwater 135 ultra race is very dangerous. True. But there are so many safety precautions built into the race that just getting into the race is a Herculean effort. And no one has ever died during Badwater either. There's like 4 pages of safety precautions that each racer has to be approved of to get into that race. And you can check out my episode of Badwater. There's so much you have to do just to pass inspection, so to speak. And the same can be said about the Barkley marathons. It doesn't have the same safety precautions, but entering it is extremely difficult. And the way it's designed helps to avoid casualties. And I also have an episode on that one as well. Now, UTMB has a lot of precautions, and they never had any casualties in the first 17 years. The last 2 years, they've had 2, one each year, and they both came from falls. So they have a pretty good track record. Unfortunately, running deaths can happen, but they are very rare, usually. And then there are companies who perhaps don't take enough precautions or plan as they should. Racing the Planet is a company that produces races at a very high cost, and it's very expensive to enter their races. And they allow runners to participate in staged races all over the world, sometimes in very undeveloped areas. Past show guest Jeff Peltier has done a couple of their races, including one in the Eastern European country of Georgia. I remember him talking about the courses going through of this particular race and what they are stage races. They do races over a week that you do a certain amount of miles every day, and then you camp out or you stay in a house or a gym or something like that. And I remember him talking about the courses going through beautiful countryside, but having to pass herds of sheep guarded by herding dogs that could be vicious if approached. And also, and these dogs might have rabies. So yeah, which is pretty common in the Georgian countryside. That's kind of scary, in my opinion. I don't want to go anywhere near dogs that might have rabies. So yeah, that is pretty dangerous. And other reviewers of Run the Planet complain that the cost of entry to participate is often very high, and it does include travel expenses to remote locations. They also complained about poor logistics management, inconsistent water station availability, inadequate course markings, and issues with transportation to and from race stages. They also were concerned about the quality of medical support available during races, particularly in extreme weather conditions. And those are the kind of things that would really concern me as well. And that's a problem during some of these races overseas. You don't know what the conditions of transportation, of medical during the race, and that kind of thing, water availability, that kind of thing is all concerning. The worst disasters in race history is the Gansu Ultra in China. If you look at the Gansu province on a map, you'll see that it's a large province in northwest China. Lanzhou is the capital city with a population of 4,350,000. It's the third largest city in northwest China, and it sits on the banks of the Yellow River. The Gansu province is a large area filled with picturesque mountains, luscious valleys, and dotted with cities and villages, with the Yellow River winding its way throughout. It looks absolutely beautiful. It really looks like a wonderful area to visit. Gansu province girds a narrow corridor of traversable and arable land sandwiched between inhospitable Tibetan and Mongolian plateaus. It sits along the mighty sediment-laden Yellow River, eulogized as China's sorrow. It links China proper to the western borderlands, and it was a really important area for trade, linking eastern China to Central Asia. But Gansu is also China's poorest province. One of its greatest claims to fame, probably one they don't wish to have, is that the city of Baiyan, the host of the race, was also the host city of China's most prolific serial killer, the Chinese Jack the Ripper, who killed 11 women between 1988 and 2002. So they were hoping that the Gansu race was going to give the area a better reputation. The course is not particularly technical or difficult. People say the Yellow River Stone Forest Ultra is the simplest 100K trail race in China, said a participant, who shared her story anonymously. This is because the total elevation gain, less than 3,000 meters, isn't that much compared to other races, and because most of the terrain isn't that technical and can be run. 172 runners took to the starting line. The runners are only the best runners in China, as the race directors only wanted those best runners having the top times in 20 miles or more races. So only fast runners were allowed in this race, or they wanted only the fastest runners. The race events of the weekend included a 5K, a half marathon, and a 100K. The disaster happened during the 100K, which is about 62 miles. The course has unique challenges. It begins at an elevation of around 6,500 feet above sea level. After leaving an area known for sightseeing as the ancient Yellow River Stone Forest, And it's huge, very popular in China. It is extremely beautiful, sandstone rocks, and the path is made up pretty much of ground sandstone into sand. The course tracks through uninhabited areas. The checkpoints are set up at 8K points throughout the race. 2 and 3 are the most challenging. The section features a near vertical 1,000-meter scramble along a steep and narrow stone and sand path. The highest point is at 7,300 feet, so it's not a huge elevation gain, although the starting elevation point is high. So I guess the first climb is probably the hardest. At the end of the climb, checkpoint 2, no relief awaits runners. There is no one there. Because the section is inaccessible by vehicle, no supplies, food, or water are delivered to the summit, nor is there anywhere to shelter. Runners simply have to persevere another 11 kilometers to reach checkpoint 4. But see, that's what bugs me a lot. You have races like Hard Rock, where, yeah, there is a checkpoint at the top of a mountain, or I guess it's a saddle between 2 points. There's no cars up there. There's no RV vehicles. There's no road. But yet there still are people up there with an aid station that has shelter, that has food, that has beverages, that has liquids, fluids, and they're still there. They actually have a point of being there. Not on this race. Nope, no one there. And there should have been someone there. At the most neediest time in the race, there was no one there. It was on this stretch that the real trouble started. Rainfall that began as a few droplets turned into a dense downpour. As runners rounded a sharp corner after checkpoint 2, they were met with force. 8 headwinds over 40 miles per hour that pelted the rain. Then hail against their faces. The temperature kept dropping and dropping. And the thing is, there's no cell service in this area. And unlike the 3 previous years, the weather had been sunny and hot. So I guess the race producers thought, oh, it's going to be beautiful. We don't have to worry about it. It's been sunny and hot, so it'll be sunny and hot. That's not how things work. Weather changes. You have to be prepared for changes in the weather. The race directors did not warn runners of possible sudden storm conditions, so most runners wore short-sleeve shirts or sleeveless shirts and shorts. There was actually a storm notice that the storm was coming in later, but the race directors didn't even think that maybe that storm will come in earlier, and they didn't prepare. I mean, the whole story here is they didn't prepare. That's the whole thing right there. Each runner was given an emergency blanket, but few of them took it along with them because they expected the weather to be warm, just like previous years. Again, the directors did nothing to warn them of the possible storm. It was also suggested, quote unquote, that each runner take a windbreaker with them. But that's all. That's all they said. They suggested, quote unquote, that each runner take it. And the runners did it. Runners didn't take anything with them. Most of them just had either a tank top or a short sleeve shirt and shorts. That's it. They didn't take any water. They didn't take anything with them. Most of them didn't have a hydration vest or even a waist pack with them. Even though the weather outlook was good at the start of the race, the rain started between checkpoint 2 and 3, and it did not stop. The temperatures went down quickly, and the rain turned to hail, and then the strong wind started, which of course mucks up everything. The weather report was for precipitation to occur later in the day, but the race organizers didn't spread the word or plan for it at all. The runners gave their windbreakers, those few who had them, they gave them to race officials to move to checkpoint 6 later in the race because they didn't think there was going to be a storm till later in the race. But as we all know, everyone but the race directors, that you have to keep a close eye on the weather because it changes. Oh my gosh, this story is so frustrating to me. It just makes me very, very angry and very sad for everyone involved, except the directors, the race directors. It makes me angry at them. During the downpour, runners scrambled to find what shelter they could. Some tried to hide behind rocks. There were no trees, so they tried everywhere. Some found safety in a small cave. They huddled together as best they could. The communication failures delayed SOS calls from the mountain by 45 minutes. There was no cell service, remember, so it was really bad. Being underdressed, the racers could not maintain their body heat. Many racers who sought shelter in caves were not found in time and passed away from hypothermia before they were rescued. And rescue crews, oh my gosh, there's another thing right there. They were eventually on the scene, but they were too slow to get there to help the runners. No one was prepared for this kind of tragedy, except there were two heroes in this. One shepherd who lived on the mountainside cave guided a few runners to his humble cave where they were safe and warmed until they were rescued hours later. Another hero was a guy on a motorcycle who came up and he got two runners off the mountain on his motorcycle, but then the weather was too bad and he couldn't help anyone else. Many runners collapsed right on the trail and were not rescued on time. They were found hours later on the trail. They couldn't do anything else. They couldn't move. They were left there on the trail. The temperature dropped to 35 degrees Fahrenheit quickly, while freezing rain pelted them. It was clear that the race directors did not prepare at all. At all. Sure, things were fine when the weather was great, but as we saw, this is not always the case. And even though I'm not a huge fan of UTMB, I applaud them for taking great care in the safety of their runners by requiring a huge list of items that their participants must carry. I've seen runners complain about all the items, but it hardly seems worth complaining about if they save your life. Does it? Does it really? Would you rather be unprepared like these poor victims, or would you rather be overprepared? I would rather be overprepared. I'd rather take something I didn't need than not have something I needed. Among the UTMB required items that you take in your running vest or wear are whistle, food, waterproof jacket and pants, hat, survival blanket, headlamp, cup, gloves, phone, minimum 1 liter water, and poles. Now, some of those things could have saved some of these people. Just saying. 6 hours passed before it reached the emergency stage. 6 hours! Why did it take so long for the emergency crews to get there? 6 hours! Come on, you're telling me when the rain started, when it started getting cold, you didn't get those emergency crews up there immediately? That's because they don't have emergency crews. That's the truth. They don't have emergency sources. They have fire departments. A fire department went up to get them. Are fire departments trained for emergencies in the mountains? Probably not. They don't have emergency crews like we do, search and rescue. They don't have that in China, apparently. In remote areas where there's parks, where there's national parks, they don't have search and rescue. They have fire departments. I mean, not to put a ding on fire departments, but come on. They don't have what we have here in the U.S. and Canada and Europe. I'm sure other countries, Australia, I'm sure has them, New Zealand. I'm sure other countries as well have search and rescue. They do not have that there, apparently. This is unacceptable to me. I don't think I would do a race in a country in a remote area if they did not have search and rescue. Right? Sorry, I just wouldn't do it. In an effort to be part of the ultra running world, the race organizers failed to keep the runners safe. They just wanted to be part of the in thing. And because of this, the blame went solely on the race organizers. One man, Lee Zawabi, committed suicide later in the year of 2021. Others received demerits, but this was not enough for the general public. The Chinese government suspended all high-risk events, including ultra races, climbing events, paragliding, and the like. In 2023, the families of the victims finally received justice when 5 of the organizers received jail terms of 3 to 5 years. It took that long. Come on, it took that long? Really? Okay. The Gansu Marathon is not the first time a race in China has had problems. The running boom has led to a particularly Chinese brand of tragic comedy that occasionally veered into the absurd, like when thousands of novice runners fell ill during a marathon in Guangdong after they mistook scented soap in their swag bags for energy bars. You couldn't tell it was soap by the way it smelled? I'm sorry. I know after such a tragedy, maybe we need a laugh, right? But how can you mistake soap for an energy bar? Sorry. They have to feed you more. I've never been that hungry. Back to Gansu. What a horrible, horrible tragedy that never, ever should have happened, and I feel very bad for people and families who've lost their lives. But here are some things to think about before you sign up for a race outside your home country. How long has a race company been in business? Does the race company produce other races or events? And I would look to see what other events they have. What does their website look like? Is there a lot of information on the website? Do they produce the website in English, or is it just in their own home language? This is important. You may not think so. You may think, well, maybe they don't speak English. English is a universal language, and if they don't speak English, you might not get the help you need if you need help when you run their race. Is there an FAQ that is also in English? This is important again. Is there information on travel, hotel, that kind of thing? Look over their website. If it's very sparse website, if there's not a lot of information available, pass it up. Reviews. Look at all the reviews of the race. I would not do a race overseas if it was their first year they're doing it. I would pass that up. But if they've done it for a few years and they have reviews, read the reviews. It's really important. Runners are very honest about races. They will tell you what they think about the race, and they will give their honest opinion about it. Look at tour packages if you're interested in that type of thing. Look for reputable running tour companies and see if they offer that kind of race. And if you want to pay a little bit more, you can do that. Ask in running groups if anyone has done that race and see what they think about it. They'll tell you. I mean, they'll tell you the truth. They're very honest about that kind of thing. Look to see if that country or that county or that area, that city has what kind of emergency services they have, if they have, if they only offer a fire department, or if they have search and rescue, what kind of thing is offered there. That is really important to me, to know that they have really good emergency services. And I hate to say it, but I would avoid races in China because I don't think they offer the kind of help that is necessary if things go wrong. Maybe they'll get better. Perhaps things will be more up to modern standards in the future, but right now it isn't. And I don't want to put my life at risk in someone else's hand. I mean, if you don't mind doing a primitive style race and you don't mind taking things to the edge, that's you, but that is not me. I think there are plenty of races in other parts of the world where it's much safer and much better to do. All right, so that is it. And I just really, really hope that maybe some lessons have been learned. I really hope that things are run better and with the runners in mind, because it is the runners who have to come first, and their safety is important. Yes, ultra running is a tough sport, and it can be a dangerous sport, but it doesn't have to be stupidly dangerous. This is ridiculous. Okay, I did promise I was going to review Brad Fawley's book, The Frontrunner. In brief, I liked it. Without giving it away, I'll share a few thoughts on it. I'm not going to give any spoilers or anything like that, but I really thought it was well written. I liked the descriptions. I liked Brad's writing style. I liked the characters. I think it's a great book for both runners and non-runners. For non-runners, especially those who enjoy track and field, who enjoy watching the Olympics, I think they would appreciate it. If they don't, I'm not sure if they would get it, but I think if they enjoy those two types of things, it's a good book. There are a couple of things that I personally wish were done differently, but it's not my book, so I'm not giving away anything, as I said. One thing that I wish he would have described more was when Russ Clayton, the main character, runs his first marathon. It's basically says, well, he ran this race and then it was done. And that's all he said. And it was like, oh, I wish he would have described it. It would have been really fun to see what was going on because it was an important moment in his life. It was an important milestone, but it was just kind of like glanced over. And I thought it was pretty big, but not apparently to the book or not to him. And there are other characters that apparently were big in the story, but they were written about a lot in the first part, and then you didn't hear from them for a few hundred pages, and then you heard from them at the end. So it was kind of strange how that worked. Maybe it would have made the book longer, and that's fine. I like long books, but maybe a few more pages of them in the middle somewhere so we didn't forget about them or didn't wonder why aren't they being mentioned here at all. So that was kind of strange. Other than those couple things, it was very enjoyable and I liked it a lot. So I do recommend it and I think you should read it. And I know that was kind of cryptic a little bit there, but I didn't want to give anything away at all. I do have a song of the week. It's a piano instrumental. It's really, really beautiful piece. It's by Paul Reeves, The Smile of a Child. And it's really, really pretty. Sometimes I like to throw on an instrumental, be it this kind of thing, by one musician and composer or a classical piece or something. I like something that mixes up my music that isn't just some rock piece or metal or something, that it gives me a nice breather that I can just have in the background and say, this is nice. Just a breath of fresh air, as I like to call it. And it's a really, really nice piece of music. And it's short, but it's very, very nice, and I think you'll enjoy it. All right, so that is it. And all the topics that I had today will be on the website, martharunstheworld.com. If you want to email me, it's martharunstheworld@gmail.com. And until next week, let's tie up our shoelaces and go for a run.